to the Pinnacle Mindset Show. I am your host tonight, Sophie. You'll have heard my voice before. And tonight we have Jeffrey Webster on the show. Welcome, Jeffrey.
Hello, thank you for having me on. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, that's amazing. So I thought, rather than me introducing you, I thought, why don't you introduce yourself? Who are you? What do you do?
So my name's Jeffrey Webster. I'm a sport and performance psychology consultant based in Scotland and normally a bit further afield, but this year based from pretty much my bedroom, living room, office, house. And yeah, I work with an array of teams, individual athletes, national governing bodies, academies, organizations to essentially cater for the mental side of performance and health and well-being as well.
Amazing. So let's go back to little baby Jeffrey. How did you get into, like, what made you go on this path?
Yeah, so I guess going way back, I've always been a lover of sport. I was always interested in sport. I was always participating, competing, in a different range of sports when I was younger. I didn't really specialize in the one sport. I was an all-rounder. On a Monday night it would be badminton, Tuesday night basketball, Wednesday nights it would be shinty, you name it, I played it, and it was great fun. Absolutely loved it and just enjoyed the whole social side of things. I enjoyed competing, and that naturally led me on to wanting to do a little bit of coaching. So I started to coach kind of mid to late high school, coached basketball and badminton around different primary and secondary schools in Glasgow and East Renfrewshire. Loved the coaching aspect of it as well. I really enjoyed coaching younger kids and getting them interested in sport and the participation side of things. And naturally that led me on to wanting a career in sport. I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I just know that I wanted to work within sport. That's what I was passionate about, and I couldn't really see myself working in any other discipline. I didn't really know what I wanted to do. Like I said, it was just I just knew that I wanted to work within sport. So from there, went on to university to do a degree in sport coaching and development, and there was a lot of science, sports science in that as well. So I was learning about loads of different disciplines within the sporting fields: strength and conditioning, coaching itself, nutrition, biomechanics, physiology. And it wasn't until the third year of my undergrad that I started learning about sports psychology. I knew it was a thing, but I didn't really know what it was and how it could help and what it would look like. And I remember as clear as day the first sports psychology lecture. And the lecturer came in and she was going on about how beneficial sports psychology was. She was a sports psychologist herself. She was going on about how beneficial sports psychology was, how she believes that every team should work with one. It can provide you with X, Y, and Z benefits. And it seemed amazing. My jaw kind of hit the floor. Then I started to naturally question things, kind of along the lines of, okay, why, if it's so good, why, if it's so beneficial, why, if it can help so many athletes, why have I never worked with one, never mind work with one, why have I never even seen one in person? Out of all of my years, probably about 15, 16 years by this stage, all of my years involved in sport, whether it was participating, whether it was competing up to kind of regional level, And then latterly coaching, why have I never even seen one in person? And it didn't really match up. And I would go to these lectures week after week, and I would learn about different concepts to do with sports psychology: confidence, motivation, goal setting, imagery, handling pressure, all of this kind of stuff. And it just resonated with me so much, and I could relate everything that I was learning back to my experiences when I was younger, playing sport and competing, and thinking to myself, geez, this could have helped me so much.
Yeah,
This could have helped
definitely.
me so much. This could have potentially taken me to the next level if I'd wanted to. And I just thought there were so many benefits that my younger self didn't get, not because I couldn't, but because I didn't even know that it was a thing.
Yeah,
I didn't even know that I could
definitely.
receive these benefits.
Yeah, and it's so crazy, really, when you think about it, that pretty much every sports club up and down the country has a physio. And like, you don't go to a physio for when you've got a problem, you go to a physio before that problem develops. And yes, performance psychology is kind of viewed totally different, that you only go when you have a problem. And I think that you definitely have touched on a really important thing where you've just said, like, why have I never seen one? And you have also said about the benefits of working with performance psychologists. What benefits do you think? I mean, obviously you'll know loads, but what are the benefits? Like, outline the benefits for people who don't know anything about this.
Well, I would say the benefits to sport and performance psychology are twofold, really. One is the benefits on performance, how it can benefit your actual performance, whether that's in sport, whether that's in school or higher education, musical theatre, acting, whatever it may be. And specifically within that, you can improve your confidence, you can understand your mind better, you can learn to use your nerves to their advantage, learn to thrive under pressure, learn to improve your self-belief. Those are just a small few. There can be even things in relation to enjoyment and motivation. There are literally so many. The list is endless. However, to kind of, I guess, characterize them or categorize them even, I would say that, yeah, performance enhancement is one. And if a lot of athletes were to think about what holds them back within sport, there might be a few things. There might be a few things that they would like to develop and work on. Guaranteed, at least one of those things would be a psychological aspect within the sport, like confidence, like dealing with pressure, like maybe thriving in uncertainty or dealing with adversity in order to either perform the best that they can or get the results that they would like to get, or both. So
Definitely.
performance enhancement is one. The other side of things would be the health and well-being side. As a sports psych, we don't specialize in mental health. We train purely for performance enhancement. However, I think it's really important to acknowledge the connectedness of performance and health and well-being. So it can't go unnoticed, even though we don't, I guess, formally train. I've certainly been on a good few courses, and I keep on top of the current research to do with mental health, because performance and mental health, I don't think, or not mental health per se, but performance and health and well-being, can be categorized. However, at the same time, I think that they're both so connected that they should be classed within the one pillar. For example, if you are not performing too well, it could negatively affect your health and well-being. But alternatively, if your health and well-being is suffering, then you're not going to perform at your best either. So really both things have got to be taken into consideration. And I would never work with a client and purely just focus on the sport or the performance side of things. Their personal life and them as an individual, as a human being, plays such an important role as well.
100%. And I think that the mental illness is so common in athletes. Like, the figures change every time I look at them, but there are so many people that, like, a good percentage of athletes have struggled with some form of mental illness or mental illness tendencies. And my question really is, where do you think the onus comes for performance psychology to be more implemented in that?
So it's a good question, but also a tough one to answer. I guess it really depends on the context. So if I were to work with an individual client and I thought that they were struggling with mental health issues, and I actively knew that, it wouldn't be my place to work on it, but I would certainly encourage them to seek professional help in that regard. And I myself have got a referral network. I can't force them to do it. I can't force them to go, but I would suggest. I wouldn't even diagnose, because again, I'm not trained to do that. So I would ask them about it and we would talk about it in detail, but I would never say, okay, yes, you are suffering from general anxiety disorder, you are depressed. It's not my place and I'm not trained to do so. However, if they feel like they're struggling and it's not got anything to do with sport or performance, I would definitely recommend them on. So privately, referring, I think, is really important, but it also needs that buy-in from the individual as well.
Definitely. So my next question for you, Jeffrey, is, what do you think the most common issue for athletes is with regards to performance psychology, the general sports psychology world? You can
I wouldn't say that there's I wouldn't say that there's a common thread. Generally, my inquiries are quite broad in terms of the reasoning. I think that if okay, I'm going to try and pick two here. This is a tough one. I think dealing with a run of poor performance is one. So whether that is on a kind of broad level, so they have lost matches, games, events, or not performed well at a competition over the course of a few months, perhaps there's been a kind of general dip in performance over a period of time, or whether that's on a kind of narrower scale where they lose a run of points, or the I guess performance dips within a game, a set, a match, or the one competition. So I guess to explain that, maybe dealing with adversity in a kind of broad sense, is one. And it's a really interesting one, and I completely understand where they're coming from. What's interesting is a lot of the time athletes have the perception of these things being really bad.
Mm-hmm.
And sure, a run of bad points, a run of bad matches are more negative than positive. You don't want them to happen. But it's important to remember that in sport, these things are really, really common.
Yeah, definitely.
It's not likely for an athlete to produce great performance after great performance after great performance after great performance. But what happens a lot of the time is when we start performing worse than usual, we start to catastrophize that and overthink and view it as something really, really bad rather than it's just sport.
Yeah, definitely. And do you think that that is just the nature of sport, that it is going to be difficult for athletes to kind of overcome that adversity, or do you think it's a cultural thing?
I think it's the nature of sport. Sport is really difficult.
Mm-hmm.
If it was super easy and we were all able to do it, no problem, it'd be boring. And everyone would be competing at a high level.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a really, really difficult situation to be in. It kind of throws us into the deep end of dealing with uncertainty and bad things happening and nerves and pressure at all levels, whether you're a professional footballer who is aware that the media are on them, or if you're, an 8-year-old footballer where your parents are cheering you from the crowd and you're worried about selection the following week because you've had a bad game. It's all relative. In terms of culturally, I'm not too sure. I think there's certainly countries out there who are better at implementing sports psychology from a young age,
Mm-hmm.
and that can really start to shift the perception of sports psychology and all of the specific concepts within that, which can help. But I do think that, there needs to be more of an understanding in the UK about sport and what it entails, and an acknowledgement and understanding that failure is going to be extremely common.
Mm-hmm, definitely. I would agree with you on the fact that some countries are better than others. I think that especially in this country, it's still kind of viewed as a bit of an anomaly if you're not at the top level and you have a sports psychologist. It's still very rare for that to kind of be the case. But I think it is changing, and I think that it is getting a lot better. I didn't want to touch on COVID, but now that we've gone there, I think that it's important to address the fact that, I mean, you just said that a lot of people are generally struggle with dealing with adversity. How have your athletes found dealing with COVID?
Generally, I've been really impressed with how everyone I work with has dealt with the situation this year, whether that's being on lockdown and changing their whole routine up, whether that's to do with not being able to compete, therefore not having that income that they would normally have, and all of the pressures around those kind of things. Adaptability has been really key, and right from the word go, that's been the main talking points within my sessions with clients. And generally, yeah, they've adapted well. Of course, like everyone, including myself, there's been dips in motivation, which is completely understandable. But generally, with the people that I work with, their adaptability has been key this year, and it's really shown. They've When they've started to compete again, or they've started to go back to training again, there's not been this huge leap because they've been able to keep on top of certain things over this time. I've worked on areas that I wouldn't normally have time to work on with clients because of their busy schedules and everything that comes hand in hand with that. So it's actually provided some time to work on areas that we wouldn't normally work on, and also just get to know each other a little bit more and use this time to build rapport, which of course is a huge benefit to the work that I do.
Definitely. I think that at the moment we are definitely in, the pinnacle of adversity. I've never heard the word unprecedented so much in my life. So what would be your biggest advice for any athletes, whether they're 8 years old or like 20 years old? What would be your biggest advice for people dealing with adversity?
Well, I think it's important to acknowledge that we're all dealing with adversity just now, and to remember that they're not alone. Mm-hmm. I think a really important bit of advice in regards to dealing with adversity would be to take a mental step back. Like I said, we often catastrophize things. We often make mountains out of molehills in our heads when we're in a pressured situation, when we're in an adverse situation, when we're in a situation where we don't feel too great. And sometimes actually taking that mental step back and thinking about it, putting things in perspective and thinking about it a bit more slowly can do the world of good.
Yeah, definitely.
So doing that, you can start to become more creative with your thinking rather than saying, okay, this is a setback, this will affect me in a negative way. Taking that step back, you can add more to that. You can say to yourself, this is a setback. Yes, this could affect me in this negative way. However, it could provide this challenging opportunity, this avenue for development.
100%. I think the thing that you're very good at doing is reframing the words that are in your head, and that's always struck me with you, that you're very good at kind of acknowledging the like self-talk that you have. And so I'm gonna lighten the mood a bit here after we've talked about COVID and everything. I feel like I need to. And I always ask, whenever I have people on the show, I always ask, so let's just pretend that we're living in a parallel universe where we can actually have dinner parties, and you're allowed to invite 3 people, past or present. What 3 people would you invite to your dinner party?
Oh, and why? This is very interesting. Let me think. I would invite. I would invite Muhammad Ali.
Good choice. That was my
I
choice.
think one of the, was it?
Yep.
Nice. Great minds think alike, as they say. I think, one of the greatest athletes to ever live. And yeah, I would have a myriad of questions to ask him.
100%.
And I would just love to see and feel his demeanor, his presence.
Yeah.
Number 2 would be, this is difficult. This is a difficult one. Number 2 would be Conor McGregor.
Interesting.
And I'd be intrigued, because I've always been intrigued by Conor McGregor, again, for demeanor, personality, self-confidence, belief. I would like to see how that plays out if he was in the presence of Muhammad Ali.
That would be very interesting.
As well.
Yeah.
And lastly, I think it would have to be Seth Rogen to lighten the mood a little bit, because I think that dinner party could get quite intense.
Yeah, I would agree with you on that one. It's so interesting hearing different people's reactions to that. And to me, your answers just scream the sports psychologist in you. Because I can just imagine you just sitting there observing everyone's body language and stuff. But yeah, thank you so much for coming on the show tonight. Where can people find you if they want to get in touch or ask any more questions?
Sure. So I'm on pretty much all social medias. My Instagram handle is JW Performance Psychology. My Facebook page is JW Performance Agency, and my website is www.jwperformanceagency.co.uk, or you can just type in Jeffrey Webster sports psychology in Google, and I'm sure all of them will come up.
Amazing. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
No problem at all.
Do you have anything else that you would like to add?
Last one before I go, because we were kind of talking about it at the start and how psychology is generally given the back seat within the world of sport.
Yeah.
So I would encourage the listeners to think about how important sports psychology is to them. What percentage do you think the psychological side of things has on your performance? Some people say 50%. Some people even go as far as saying it's 90% mental. I'm sure you've heard all of these quotes before, or heard this in interviews. So yeah, like I said, I firstly want to maybe just get the listeners thinking about what's their percentage, and then follow that up with, and how am I working towards that percentage? If I think that sport is 80% mental, what am I doing on a weekly basis to ensure that I'm developing the mental side of my performance? Whether that's for performance enhancement reasons or health and well-being reasons. And just start to think about that. And from there, you might realize, okay, sports psychology is maybe something that could benefit me.
Definitely. I love the fact that you've just given our listeners kind of homework to do.
Sorry, everyone.
But yeah, so thank you so much for listening, guys. Do all the usual, give this video a thumbs up if you're on YouTube. You can listen to us on Facebook, Spotify, YouTube. You all know that if you're listening. And make sure to share and like all the socials to make sure that you can keep up to date with everything that's coming. But thank you so much, Jeffrey, for coming on the show. And I hope that you guys are all staying safe right now. And we shall see you next time.